I like having money. So do most people. It can be very difficult and time-consuming to earn large swathes of money, depending on your risk tolerance, of course. Unless you somehow win big with options trading or something, you normally spend 40 hours a week working to earn a livable income. Income that you can then later lose to options trading, of course. But what if you never had to go to work again? How would society function when everyone receives a base level of income from the government?
Programs testing out guaranteed income are popping up around the country.
Financial floor, what's called a guaranteed basic income.
A paycheck every month, even if you do not have a job.
Hi, sorry, I just quickly wanted to say before the video, I'm really trying to make this YouTube thing work, so if you can click a few buttons for me, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. For those who don't know, UBI is a recurring payment from the government to every household irregardless of their income or employment. Yes, literally, that's it. Like any economic policy, it has its benefits and costs. Unlike many of the websites I've had the absolute displeasure of researching from, I think it's prudent to actually explain the pros and cons and to look at the evidence. Most information online gives yes and no arguments without much study into them. One website even directly contradicts itself, like what the fuck? It may be asserted that UBI would lead to higher economic growth for the simple reason that it would increase aggregate demand. This idea is rather simple. If you give people money, they're going to spend it, which generates economic growth. One study from the Roosevelt Institute released a report where they tested UBI with a macroeconomic model. They report that, according to the model, UBI led to an increase in not only growth but also subsequent effects to other macroeconomic indicators, like a higher price level and higher employment and wages. This is good. A different study that conducted research in Kenya suggests that UBI allowed its recipients to invest more. In terms of the study, this meant that they either pursued education or entrepreneurial endeavours, which, generally speaking, leads to economic growth. Now do keep in mind that this study measured UBI's effects on Kenyan villages in poverty, so an increase in education would be unlikely in developed economies, for better or for worse. But despite that, it is interesting to see how households behaved with the extra money. What's that? Despite what you might expect, the study outlines that the cash wasn't being spent on alcohol. Fair play to the Kenyans. Going back to the first study with the increased aggregate demand I referred to, there is quite a big caveat with how exactly UBI achieved higher economic growth. If UBI is achieved by taxing households equally, then there is no change to the economy. The increased demand into the economy is just as big as the tax leakage out of the economy. According to the paper, higher growth is only achieved due to the distributional effects of UBI, such that lower income households have a higher propensity to consume and therefore spend proportionally more than higher income households. A rather pertinent issue you might have on the topic of UBI is that it disincentivizes work. After all, why bother working when you can receive enough money to live on by doing absolutely nothing? Finland conducted this very experiment to see how UBI would affect employment. The results actually suggest the contrary. According to their 2017 and 2018 experiments, the change in the number of days the participants worked was negligible. This is further backed by another study conducted on the Alaska Permanent Fund. For those who didn't know, citizens of the state of Alaska actually receive, on average, $1,600 a year unconditionally. The paper from 2019 concluded that there was no change to the labour market. So what did change? Well, as it turns out, receiving money every month makes you a lot happier. As part of the Finnish UBI experiment, recipients of the basic income reported much less economic and mental stress. In the Kenyan study, there was a measured decrease in depression rates. A fairer redistribution of income could lead to an on-average happier economy due to the Easterlin paradox. UBI also radically eliminates poverty. ensuring everyone can afford basic necessities. So far, this video has only really explained the positives of UBI. But the humongous elephant in the room is its cost. How can a government afford to pay every citizen a basic income? This is by far the concept's biggest disadvantage and largely unanswered issue. A man by the name of Andrew Yang ran for president in the United States in 2020. One main premise to his campaign was UBI, a nice $1,000 check for everyone over the age of 18. Sounds great, until you realise that it would cost about half of the US budget. He did have plans on how to finance it, such as introducing VAT, a carbon tax, and increasing the tax burden on capital gains. It remains rather unlikely, though, that these taxes would be able to support the approximate $2.8 trillion it would cost to finance this basic income plan.
I read about
To include my own opinion on the matter,
we do not care.
The cost of it all makes UBI seem more like a fantasy than reality to me. It also seems pretty nonsensical to pay the richest and poorest households the same income. There's a reason why the majority of cash transfers today are conditional, and that's because it makes sense. It makes sense that a child benefit exists only for parents of children. It makes sense that a disability allowance exists only for disabled folk who can't work. There is actually a risk that a basic income would increase inequality of all things, which is quite ironic considering its proponents are normally left-wing. Higher income households have much higher discretionary income, meaning a large proportion of the UBI would go straight into savings and investments. This makes richer households richer, whilst poorer households spend largely on essential goods. It makes no sense to me to increase the tax burden to such an extent just for a proportion of it to end up in savings accounts. I hope this video has provided more depth to the topic than any Google search could have done. UBI as a topic is being discussed more and more as a concept, and I'm excited to see what future research can discover about it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Cheerio.